Hi everyone, you're listening to Accents. I am Katerina and I currently serve as the director of the Kentucky Book Festival. With me is writer Alexandra Mendez, one of the authors who will join us on October 21st. Hi Alexandra, wonderful to meet you.
Hi, Katerina. It's very nice to meet you as well. Thank you so much for inviting me. I'm excited to be here.
You'll be coming to the festival with your debut middle grade novel, What the Jaguar Told Her. It's available in English and also in Spanish. How exciting is that? uh,
Yes.
please introduce this novel to our listeners.
Yes. This book is about a 13-year-old girl named Jade O'Callahan, who is Mexican American, and it's the story of how she meets an elderly storyteller who is also a jaguar in the woods behind her house in Atlanta, Georgia, in the early 2000s. And this storyteller winds up telling and painting for her stories of ancestral Mexico. And through that, Jade's going through her normal middle school life and challenges, and at the same time, through these stories, starting to come to terms with her own Mexican American identity. So that's what the book is.
And the book describes a time of incredible change in the life of the
Yes.
main character. And what do you think is the most challenging change that is facing her?
That's interesting because she has internal challenges having to do with her family, having to do with the changes going on in her own body, going through puberty, and also big changes going on in the world. So it takes place in 2001. And I think, one of the major changes, I don't know if it's, there's so many challenges she's facing, but one of the major changes is this before and after of the world with the attacks of September 11th, 2001. And so that's something that, the world is going through. So there's a large, massive scale challenge there. And on a more personal level, but no less, big of a challenge for Jade is her grandmother's illness as well, and her, the questions of how can she connect with her past, with her grandmother being this source of connection with the past of her family as well.
And this is a story about teaching through stories.
Mm-hmm.
Tell us the importance of teaching through stories.
Well, first of all, thank you for putting it that way. I like that, teaching through stories. Absolutely. I mean, I think one thing that's nice about stories, and that I hope that gets, teachers excited about using novels in the classroom and this kind of thing, is that even, a reader will be learning something, right? If they're reading a book or if they're listening to a story. And there's a lot of research, that went into this book. And so there's a lot you can learn reading the book. And at the same time, a good story is not particularly didactic, and one of the, or explicitly so. And so, one of the main points that Eatsley, the Jaguar storyteller, tries to tell Jade and share with her is this idea that a story can be told so many different ways, right? And there's not necessarily one thing that you always are going to get out of a story. You, as a reader or as a listener, are bringing something to that story as well. And so as a teaching mechanism, it has that kind of advantage, I guess.
Tell us about the process of naming your characters.
Yes, thank you for this question. Well, over the course of the book, it becomes more and more clear, I think, to the reader why Jade has her name, Jade. So I don't want to give too much away. But I will say, yeah, I did spend a good bit of time naming several of the characters, and one of them has your name, Katerina.
Right.
I don't remember, the exact moment when I came up with that name, but in Mexican Spanish, at least, Katarina, so spelled slightly differently, means ladybug. And so there's a little bit of that connection with Katerina's character that I try to play with. In all the stories that Itzli tells, there are characters with indigenous names, Nahuatl names. And so part of what I did in deciding what to name different characters was using a resource through the University of Oregon, which is a Nahuatl dictionary, and the knowledge I had of that to come up with names. And some of these are also historical figures that Itzli winds up talking about. So yes, thank you for that question.
Did you name them at the beginning, or was that one of the late editing stage?
Most of the names are the same from the beginning, I would say. Some of them came a little bit later, or some of them changed. There was one character that had two different names that kept changing, and I had to choose one. Jade and Katerina and Itzli were all there from the beginning. Yeah.
I would love to hear an excerpt now.
Thank you. Yes. So this is at the end of the second chapter, so towards the beginning of the book. The context for this is that Jade has just come from Chicago, and she's starting at a new school in 8th grade in Atlanta, and she's walking home through the woods, through a path in the woods behind her house that connects her neighborhood and the school. So since it was Thursday and Katerina had daisies, Jade headed into the forest on her own that afternoon. She liked it this way. She relished the quiet nature sounds, the bird chirps and leaf rustles that were so calming, and so different from the idling car engines and squealing laughter of the parking lot. As she stepped along the soft dirt path, the soles of her shoes stamping their rubber pattern into the ground, that feeling came over her again, the sense someone was there, a familiar, invisible presence moving just beyond the leaves that flanked the path. It was as if someone she knew were beckoning to her, but she couldn't quite see them, much as she peered into the brush. Perhaps it was the forest itself that she was sensing. She continued down the path, letting herself be cradled by the comforting sensation as she wound through the trees. She let her mind wander with her steps. She thought of her reflection in the giant mirror in her parents' bathroom, and how the mirror couldn't tell her what she wanted to know. It couldn't tell her if she was pretty or what other people thought of her. It couldn't tell her if she would ever be a real OLH girl, that's the name of her school, who wore the uniform just so and knew how to say the whole Hail Mary. There was, of course, the other mirror, the small black one that her mom had told her to keep. The reflection in that mirror wasn't clear. You couldn't use it very well to brush your hair or check your teeth. But what if the mirror showed you something else? Not the flat reflection of how the light bounced off your face, but something different, something beyond that. Was it possible that the shiny black stone in her dresser drawer could show her something that an ordinary mirror could not? There was truly someone in the woods off the path. Jade had no doubt about it this time. It wasn't a sound that let her know this, just a feeling, a certainty. She turned to look at the brush beside her where she felt the presence, and behind green leaves shining in the late August sun that filtered through the trees, she saw a golden spotted hide. She froze. Jade held her breath. The pelt of a large animal moved noiselessly through the undergrowth. A powerful paw stepped out onto the path right in front of her, followed by the whole animal. A wild cat that rose to the height of her waist, solid and warm, and filled with a palpable, terrifying energy. Its hide, taut across well-defined muscles, was dotted with the unmistakable black eye-like rosettes of a jaguar. It was looking directly at her with its solemn amber green eyes. Jade was too frightened to scream. She could not think. She could only stare at the muscled jaw and the piercing eyes. And then she realized that it was not a jaguar standing before her, not a jaguar at all, but an old, old man.
What a description of that pivotal moment in the story.
Thank you very much.
Tell us about the importance of magic and wonder in our lives.
Oh, yes, thank you. One of the things that I think I was trying to capture in this book, consciously or not, is some of that magic and wonder from childhood, including the magic and wonder of playing in the forest, playing in a place that's safely close to home, and still somehow kind of wild. And I had a lot of fun when I was a kid growing up doing this. In a way, I think nature can be a place that awakens our sense of awe and wonder, especially now in a time when, in the age of social media and technology that connects us in amazing sort of other magical ways. But I think that, stopping and seeing, and looking at nature and experiencing it is also a way that we can kind of be in touch with the wonder of the world. And so that was something I really wanted to capture here, especially the wonder of the specific nature around Atlanta, where I grew up, the specific plants and flowers.
How did the idea of a mirror that shows you who you are or aspects of your nature, how did that idea come to you?
Yes, thank you. Well, so as I mentioned before, there's a lot of research that went into this book. And when I started writing this book, which was over a decade ago, I was studying a lot of pre-Columbian art and history and Mexican colonial era art and history. And the Aztec god Tezcatlipoca is associated with this black mirror that is not an ordinary mirror. And so obsidian mirrors, were used in pre-Columbian times, and in fact, there are some colonial era mirrors as well. And so that was how I came up with that. But, of course, I made it my own in making this story. And I think what Jade is contemplating in the passage that I just read, she really doesn't know what the mirror does yet. She'll find that out, many chapters later. She's trying to struggle and figure it out. But what she's realizing is that, that mirror is very different from one that, just shows you a reflection. There's something more there. And so, I wanted to really base a lot of, most of, the magic and the stories in something that had a kind of precedent, often in primary source documents and art from, pre-Columbian and colonial Mexico.
How does art help Jade make sense of the world?
Well, Jade's an artist and she doesn't know it yet. And one of the things that she starts to learn is how art and stories can be intertwined. And so by making art, I think her mind goes to another place that's kind of private and her own. She can figure things out in her own notebook. She can try out different colors on the page, and she can see visually where are the gaps in her knowledge. Like, for example, what does she know and what does she not yet know about the town in Jalisco where her grandparents came from, and she needs Itzli as a guide to figure out how to grow as an artist.
What is young people's relationship to history? How do we need to engage young people to connect with their origins?
Yeah, I think one way that this can be done is through stories, and through connecting things that seem really far removed, maybe 500 years ago, with a current experience. I think, one way to do that is to start looking around at the landscape around us. What monuments are there? Like maybe if you're a kid, you go to a park and there's, something that you've always seen, and you don't always think about that plaque or that monument that's there. So I think one way to get kids interested in history is to make these connections to the world around them and their lives. So for example, like, Stone Mountain in Atlanta is this huge monument, and once if you just kind of go there and hike, that's great, but if you stop to think about the history of that place, then it can hold more significance.
What do you think? Do you think that there might be a point in which the ancestral stories can become burdens? I'm asking because I am from Eastern Europe and there have been so many wars, so much
Mm,
bloodshed and redrawing of the maps over
mm,
the centuries. You just mentioned 500 years.
mhm,
So I've seen these ancient animosities perpetuated and emphasized in school to serve
mm,
political parties and interests. And I personally had to teach myself out of them over, and it took some time. So we carry mistrust and grudges with our neighbors. And I'm talking about the Balkans right now, instead
mm.
of going forward in our common humanity.
Yeah, that's a really great question. Thank you. And I think, it's important to keep in mind kind of what I was talking about earlier when you were asking about teaching and stories, right? A good story doesn't have just one message. A good story isn't just propaganda, I suppose, right? And also, a good story might destabilize what you thought you believed before, or what you thought you understood before. I mean, I guess I'll answer this question in two ways. One is, I'll say that there's a scene when pretty early on, when Eastley is talking to Jade, and it's the first time when she realizes that the Mexica, or the Aztecs, were in fact, the experience of many indigenous people in Mexico of the Aztecs was the experience of living under a pretty brutal empire in a way, right? And so that is kind of destabilizing for Jade, because on the one hand, we have a celebration of an amazing civilization that absolutely should be celebrated, right? That's celebrated on the Mexican flag. And at the same time, an acknowledgement of the diversity of different people and stories about that time that together make up, Mexican history and what Mexico is today. And even you could say the diaspora, Mexicans and other places, especially the US. And the other way I'll answer your question is that there are lots of ways in which the story gets told for Mexicans or Mexican Americans about what Mexico is. And with this book, I really wanted to portray a version of how I experienced Mexico to be, how I experienced it growing up, especially, which includes elderly people who are great storytellers, and beautiful ceramics, which become, a big part of the story. Markets where you have, handmade wares and this kind of thing. And that's a different story about Mexico than, I guess, the one that's often told or heard in the US. I don't know if that answers all your questions, but there's some of the things that came to mind.
That is valuable. Thank you very much. Did you consider translating your own book into Spanish?
Oh, yes. that was a conversation that I had with my publisher, but it was pretty clear to me that that's a very specific skill and art translation, and so I wanted to trust somebody who could do it a lot better than me, which I think is ultimately what happened. And I really wanted the book to, in Spanish, sound like it could have been originally written in Spanish, basically, you know. And so I was really happy when Ariana Molinari was able to translate the book, and did such a poetic job with it.
Do you write poems yourself?
I wasn't expecting that question, but
Well,
of
I'm
course.
asking because
Yeah.
the work is very lyrical.
Thank you very much. Yes, I do write poems. I don't talk about that much. No, I mean, yes, I've published some poetry earlier. I primarily consider myself a fiction writer right now, but yes, I do write poems, and in fact, I would like to read more poetry, and I would like to incorporate poetry more into my life, in fact. But yes, poetic language is very important to me.
What are you working on now? After 10 years of work on What the Jaguar Told Her.
Yes. Well, that was certainly not 10 years all the time working on that. I did my PhD in the middle there, and wrote a dissertation. But I'm working on my next book right now, and it's in its incipient stages where I'm not yet talking about it, because I need it to kind of like percolate in my mind and
I
sit.
totally understand.
Yeah.
But
oh, really? Thank you.
I totally understand, but I cannot help but ask, what was your dissertation on?
Oh, thank you for asking. Yes. My dissertation has to do with a network of intellectuals in the 16th century between Spain and Venice, who were exchanging information about the exploration and invasion of the Americas. So I was looking at a lot of letters back and forth between them, and translations of the Spanish chronicles into Italian, and the publication of these works.
What is the most important thing you teach your students? If there is one thing that you want them to remember, what is it? The most important thing. Okay, it could be two if you cannot boil to just one.
I think, yeah, when I'm teaching a creative writing workshop or leading a workshop, I think, I've often done this with young people. So I think maybe the most important thing that I want people to come away with is to trust yourself. That if you have a story that you feel like you want to write it. Don't don't think that you can't, or don't think that you can't be a writer, and also it might take a long time, but trust your instinct, and I think, working to make your writing the very best it possibly can, so that it's satisfying to you, is more important than trying to satisfy someone in the publishing industry or something like that. And ultimately, that, I think, is what's going to lead you to success if you do want to publish something. So that's what I would say.
Thank you, Alexandra. I look forward to meeting you in person as well. And we are thrilled to have you in Kentucky in October. We here have Wildcats of our own. That's UK sports team.
Excellent. Yeah, no, thank you. I'm really excited to meet you in person as well. I'm so excited for the Kentucky Book Festival. Thank you, Katerina.